mischief. I want you to hit me as hard as you can.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of Animation Movies Revisited, where we take a look back at some of the greatest animated films and rediscover the reasons they've left a lasting impression throughout the years. In this episode, we'll be making our way to Tokorozawa City, Japan, where a young girl named Satsuki Kusakabe and her family have just moved into enchanted farmland, where mysterious forest spirits are known to cause mischief. I'm speaking, of course, about Studio Ghibli's fantasy animated feature, My Neighbor Totoro. Before becoming a household name, a fixture at Hot Topic, and Studio Ghibli's most recognizable mascot, Totoro began his journey into the hearts of millions as a storybook character for the world-famous creator Hayao Miyazaki. Hailed as one of the most influential storytellers in all of Japan, Miyazaki invented Totoro out of an act of frustration with his current job as an animator for Isao Takahata's television series 3,000 Leagues in Search of Mother. Feeling like his life wasn't going anywhere anytime fast, Miyazaki got to work on creating a story all his own. At first, Miyazaki envisioned My Neighbor Totoro as a children's book and began drawing pictures of a furry mythical creature standing in a Satayama. Back when My Neighbor Totoro was conceived, stories about normal kids living in ordinary places were considered a risk by any measure. Kids back then wanted rambunctious robots, the adventures of a little white lion, and a female-fronted sports drama that helped pave the way for shoujo anime. In short, if your character didn't have superpowers or live in a fantastical setting, your work was considered a risky investment, regardless of the purity of your intentions. Thanks for watching our show. If you like what you see, like this video and click on the bell to receive notifications every time a new one goes up. Now back to the show. Miyazaki used watercolor to create the concept paintings for My Neighbor Totoro. At the start, he painted a version of the iconic creature and his humanoid companion, a 7-year-old girl named Mei, or Satsuki. The names were interchangeable at this stage of the project, given that Satsuki is a traditional Japanese name for the month of May. As Miyazaki continued working on the story, he quickly realized that the world inhabited by his characters was growing larger, and that the Totoro project would require a different approach. Feeling as if the concept could use another set of eyes, Miyazaki contacted art director Kazuo Oga and asked if he could lend his perspective. Miyazaki knew that Oga would challenge his ideas and have plenty to say about Totoro's overall appeal and aesthetic. Together, Miyazaki and Oga refined the project's color palette, giving the characters and setting a more vibrant and natural look. As pieces to the project steadily came together, Miyazaki decided that the story of Mei and Totoro would be best represented through the art of animation. Considering that Miyazaki has been called the Walt Disney of Japan, you'd think that he'd have no problem selling such an adorable concept to potential buyers. However, Miyazaki was still in the process of making a name for himself, and discovered rather quickly that some companies viewed Totoro as something antiquated and potentially difficult to sell to young audiences. Miyazaki pitched My Neighbor Totoro to the Tokuma Shoten Publishing Company in the early 80s, and found himself rejected. Not to be ignored, Miyazaki and producer Toshio Suzuki tried to sell My Neighbor Totoro again in 1987. But the financiers and distribution executives didn't think that the lovable and lethargic forest spirit was capable of capturing the imaginations of moviegoers. Fools! Entertainment back then was all about guns, action, and speed. I wanted my movie to be peaceful, tranquil, and innocent. I wanted to create that kind of world. Also, I wanted to prove that a movie like this could be successful, Miyazaki once said about the process of bringing My Neighbor Totoro to the screen.
Come on, what are you waiting for? You have to laugh loud to scare a spirit.
When the story focused only on Mei and Totoro, Miyazaki envisioned the project as a 40-minute short film. However, As the world of Totoro began to expand with every new idea, production aspirations increased alongside the cast of characters. It was at this point in the creative process that Miyazaki decided to split Mei into two separate characters. Mei was now Mei and Satsuki, two young women with different worldviews experiencing magic in a world fraught with real problems. Directed and written by Hayao Miyazaki, My Neighbor Totoro tells the heartwarming story of a family who moves to a seemingly haunted house, nestled in the farming area of Tokorozawa City, located in the Saitama Prefecture. At the head of the household is Tatsuo Kusakabe, voiced by Shigesato Atoi in the Japanese version, Gregory Snegoff for the Streamline Pictures release, and Tim Daly for the Disney dub. Then there are Tatsuo's pride and joy, 10-year-old Satsuki, voiced by Noriko Hidaka, Lisa Mickelson, and Dakota Fanning for their respective versions, and 4-year-old Mei, played by Chika Sakamoto, Cheryl Chase, and Elle Fanning in each rendering of the film. Lastly, there's Yasuka Kusakabe, the love of Tatsuo's life, who spends the entirety of the film in a hospital while being treated for an unnamed illness. Yatsuko is voiced by Sumi Shimamoto, Alexandra Kentworth, and Leah Salonga in each iteration. Soon after exploring their new home, the Kusakabe family learns that their house is a haven for wayward forest spirits. Often friendly, curious, and harmless, these creatures go about their business while remaining invisible to most humans. When they choose to be seen, it's usually to guide worthy guests into their captivating world.
I bet you're Totoro.
As Tatsuo, Satsuki, and Mei adjust to life in Tokorozawa City and prepare for their mother's eventual return from the hospital, Satsuki and Mei are introduced to Totoro, a massive forest spirit that can commune with nature and is capable of flight. Inspired by several different animals, Totoro shares much in common with the Japanese raccoon dog, called a tanuki. In talking about the character throughout the years, Miyazaki has insisted that Totoro is neither a dog nor a raccoon, but has suggested that cats and owls played a role in his design. In the film, Totoro appears to the girls on several occasions, be it for a nap within the safety of a massive camphor tree, to wait with them at a bus stop in the rain, or join them in a dance that helps their garden grow. Each instance presents an opportunity for Totoro to remind Satsuki and Mei that magic exists despite them living in a harsh world, and that so long as you respect and embrace the wonders of nature, a friend will always be there to fuel the wilds of your imagination. My Neighbor Totoro is semi-autobiographical, in that some aspects of the film are based on true events. When Miyazaki was a child, his mother, Yoshiko Miyazaki, was hospitalized for a severe case of spinal tuberculosis, which caused her to be bedridden from 1947 until 1955. According to the book Hayao Miyazaki, Master of Japanese Animation, she spent the first few years of her illness mostly in the hospital, but was eventually able to be nursed from home. Reminiscent of Lewis Carroll's mind-bending 1865 novel, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, My Neighbor Totoro celebrates the concept of animism, which Britannica defines as the belief in innumerable spiritual beings concerned with human affairs and capable of helping or harming human interests. Similarly, the film embraces the East Asian religion, Shintoism, in which followers express devotion toward invisible spiritual beings and powers called kami, shrines, and a plethora of rituals. Direct references and shades of these concepts can be found throughout My Neighbor Totoro, which are, of course, coupled with Miyazaki's ever-present themes of conservation and environmentalism. Helping to set the tone for Totoro's big-screen adventures is the Japanese composer Mamoru Fujisawa, professionally known as Joe Hisashi. Having arranged over 100 film scores and solo albums throughout his expansive career, Hisashi is known for combining elements of minimalist, electronica, Western classical, and Japanese classical music in his songs. In addition to arranging the whimsical score for My Neighbor Totoro, Hisashi created music for several of Miyazaki's most beloved features, including Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, Laputa, Castle in the Sky, Kiki's Delivery Service, Porco Rosso, Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Ponyo, The Wind Rises, and The Tale of Princess Kaguya. He's also set to arrange the score for Miyazaki's next, and possibly last, feature film, titled How Do You Live? Hisachi's score for My Neighbor Totoro ranges from playful and jubilant to mysterious and somber as the film takes an emotional turn during the third act. Joining Hisashi's mellifluous melodies are 5 vocal arrangements performed by Azumi Inoue, including the film's uplifting theme song, which contains a catchy chorus that is sure to have you singing along by its second refrain. While My Neighbor Totoro is famously heartwarming, it does play host to some dark fan theories that have followed the film like a shadow throughout the years. Before I give any of these theories a platform, I would like to state for the record that Miyazaki himself has debunked all of the wild ideas I'm about to list, and maintains that My Neighbor Totoro represents an innocent adventure about family and exploring the unknown. That being said, if you care to tumble down an intricate rabbit hole of intrigues, I suggest you research the Sayama Incident, which involves a brutal murder-suicide that happened in the area where My Neighbor Totoro takes place. Other theories exist that will alter your viewing experiences, such as one that casts Totoro as the god of death, or the outlandish suggestion that Satsuki and Mei are spirits themselves, waiting for the cat bus to drive them to their final destination. Like I'd said, you'll have to do your research if you want to understand why some fans believe that Totoro is a fuzzy ferryman to the great hereafter. Speaking of final destinations, My Neighbor Totoro's journey to cinemas had, at one point, encountered a surprising roadblock. Prior to its release, investors expressed concerns about people wanting to see, quote, a movie about 2 little kids and a monster in rural Japan, end quote. Baffled by their narrow-mindedness, Miyazaki and his team devised a solution: risk sharing. It was then that My Neighbor Totoro became part of a double feature, and was paired with Isao Takahata's Grave of the Fireflies. When Totoro was released in 1988, it sold just over 800,000 tickets and earned a distribution rental income of 588 million yen, or 5.1 million in US dollars. Since its initial launch, My Neighbor Totoro has been re-released in theaters on several occasions, be it through official channels or independent movie houses. Overall, it's believed that the film has earned an estimated 41 million at the worldwide box office, once all is said and done. Even if My Neighbor Totoro wasn't a box office barn burner, its legacy blazes brightly among fans, cosplay enthusiasts, and individuals that have reserved a portion of their skin for a stylish Totoro-inspired tattoo. Furthermore, if you plan on traveling to Japan's Aichi Earth Expo Memorial Park in the city of Nagakute, you'll find Ghibli Park, an immersive experience with attractions based on Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, My Neighbor Totoro, and more. Ghibli Park is finally opening its gates on November 1st, 2022. Be sure to book your travel plans accordingly. And while there's no official sequel to My Neighbor Totoro, an animated short film featuring Mei and the Cat Bus, titled Mei and the Kitten Bus, does exist. However, the only place you can view it is at Studio Ghibli Museum in Mitaka, Tokyo. Last but never least, Totoro can also be found making a cameo in Disney's Toy Story 3 as one of Bonnie's favorite stuffed animals. When Hayao Miyazaki set out to make My Neighbor Totoro, he did so with the intention of inviting audiences into a world that asks them to slow down, take in the scenery, and allow their inner child to come out and play. It's a confident film that deliberately lazes from one act to another, with tranquil scenery, breadcrumbs of mystery, and an emphasis on honoring nature in all of its majesty. It's a film that can either be taken at face value or picked apart to suit an alternate narrative that tells a dark and tragic tale. Exquisitely animated, eternally touching, and containing many of the building blocks that helped lay the foundation for Miyazaki's storied career. My Neighbor Totoro excels at leaving a lasting impression in the minds and hearts of audiences across the globe. As I watched the film in preparation for the making of this video, I found myself marveling at how My Neighbor Totoro has had a direct influence on how I've experienced every Studio Ghibli film since 1988. Totoro taught me that there's more to the animated medium than talking animals, retreads of already twisted fairy tales, and happily ever afters that often feel unearned. It fills me with childlike wonder and makes me long for the days when responsibility was at a minimum, and the woods behind my house were likely filled with magical creatures eager to play games. My Neighbor Totoro reminds me to stop and breathe, to every now and then carve out a moment of solace for myself and commune with nature. The world is a better place because My Neighbor Totoro exists exactly as Miyazaki intended. He never compromised his vision for the sake of sating studio executives or running with the rest of the pack. That's why I'll be giving My Neighbor Totoro 10 Buzz Lightyears out of 10, our first film with a perfect score for this series. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got one ticket to ride aboard the cat bus burning a hole in my pocket, and there's no time like the present to embark on a bold new adventure. Until next time, folks, stay animated.